All right, so the next couple of weeks, I'll be sharing some places that you can go to get lessons and assessments that are already made. So this week, I'm sharing the Kentucky through course tasks. These are from the Kentucky Department of Education, and unfortunately, they don't have any earth science stuff for high school. They have one that you could sort of make work, but for the most part, there's not a lot of earth science there. So next week, I will do something earth science specific since you guys don't have much to pull from this site. But for everybody else, there are at least a few of these lessons that you can use. So these were designed to be formative assessments in a really true formative assessment sense. They're set up so that the idea is you actually sit down with your team, talk about how you're going to implement that, how you're going to do it in your class, and then you pull all the results and data and talk about it and figure out where you need to go. So a lot of them you'd use maybe at the beginning or the middle of the unit before the summative assessment. However, you could modify them to be summative assessments. They do align to the SEED standards, so a lot of them have the practices and the cross-cutting concepts embedded in them. You could also pull data from them to use in your classroom with activities or assessments. You could use them to look for phenomena. They are all phenomena-based. So when you go to the website, it looks like this, and the assessment tasks are in this list that is not super easy to navigate. So I threw together this document. So really, if you just start from this document, if you click here, it'll take you to the website. And then for each grade, I put a link to the tasks that will align to those standards for that grade. I will say that there are some on here that I did not put on that document because the alignment was not really strong, but there are some that you could modify, or they might even just be high interest that you could take and modify and use with your students. So if you have some time sometime, which I that was a good joke, but you could go through and look through and see if there are any that I didn't put on that document that you might want to use. But so we'll just look at a couple. They're all set up the same way. So they start with a couple of pages that introduce just the course tasks and what they are. So the first few pages are exactly the same for all of them, but there's a lot of good information there. And then there are a couple of pages that are just an introduction to this specific task. So they highlight the cross-cutting concepts, the core idea, and the practices. They highlight the NGSS standard that it aligns to. And then they go through and basically unpack the whole thing and talk about what content students need to be using to answer this, some ideas for how to use it in your classroom. Some of them have teacher reflections from the teachers who have used them in their classroom. They all have this list of success criteria that you could use to make a rubric. You could use it for student self-assessment. You could use those for reflection later in the unit if you are using these formatively. And then there are also some kind of expected student responses that you could also use when you're making your key with your team. So there is a lot of helpful information there. And then there is the task. So this one is just a pretty straightforward, print it off, give it to students. You can look at the implementation notes on that one. Some of them come with data that you could use, whether you're using this course task or maybe you decide you want to kind of modify it, but you like this data set and you think you could make a strong summative assessment with it or a class activity. Some of them come with a whole few day sequence of how you would use this in your class over the course of a few days. So this is one that aligns to one of our physics strand 4 standards. And it goes through before you even get there, the kind of things you would do with your students. And then once you're ready to use it, it has an outline over what you would do over a couple of class periods to use this. So again, this document as well as the page itself are linked in the video comments, and then I sent them out. So this document is actually where I would start. I would suggest that you start. So next week, I'll be back with something for our earth science teachers. And for everybody else, I would... If you have a minute during your planning time and you want to look through and see if there's anything that aligns to a standard that's coming up, that next week on those planning days, some of you might be able to find something that you could use next quarter.